So,
and you need the camera on all the time, right?
Ideally, yes, if you don't mind.
Yes, I don't mind, but I sometimes, the internet connection is not that great. Sometimes turning the camera off, sometimes it helps. But keep your fingers crossed. It might be, we might not
my
need
fingers crossed. I know what it's like.
Yeah.
Experience this. If you need to turn it off at any point for the connection, go ahead. It's okay.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Professor Amal Hamada, this is how we pronounce it?
Yes.
Okay. Professor Amal Hamada, thank you so much for joining us today. So, to introduce you, you are a professor in political science at Cairo University, and your work focuses mainly on state-society relationship, military institutions, deep state, low-level politics, street politics, and non-conventional forms of political behavior and resistance. You did your PhD on the Iranian Revolution, called From Revolution to Statehood.
Yes.
So I'm really happy we're doing this interview this week because it's very timely with everything that's happening and the news. So yes. I think it's going to help us to understand better the events. And I want to start by asking you, where do you think the Iranian Revolution is going and what did it lead to so far?
Well, this is a very complicated question because the Iranian experience is very complicated by definition. And this is the number one lesson I learned from following the Iranian politics for the last 30 years. The way I wish the Iranian people are getting is 100% different from reality. Because I wish them all the luck. I wish people get to choose what they want to do with their lives. I wish women can decide for themselves whether they want to wear hijab or not. But the way I see political realities in Iran, unfortunately, I don't see this happening in the near future. What started as a very promising and very inspiring experience in 1979, unfortunately, took a very bad turn. In 1979, it was, I would argue with lots of researchers and observers that it started as an outcry against dictatorship, against westernization of the society, against imposing a different culture on a very old and glorious country. Some would argue that the clergy or the ulama hijacked the revolution, but the way it started in 1979, it was more promising than it turned. Later on, it turned out to be, I would say, a replica of the regime that was there before 1979, of dictatorship, corruption, everything, you can name it, in addition to religious institution controlling and manipulating everything. For more than 30 years later, the situation there is really, really bad. Living realities of the people are terrible, economic conditions, political conditions. But I think resistance to this regime, though, is continuous and it never stopped. But it's very hard because of the alliance between religion, politics, and money that is taking place in Iran.
Thank you. So you think if things weren't going that way and if there was a better political situation, less corruption, it would have been better? Maybe the resistance...
Definitely. Yes, but a very important element in understanding the Iranian reality is to understand the relationship between politics and religion there. Mm-hmm. Because in the Western academia, we are used to the simple idea of separation between religion and politics. But in the Iranian society, not to say the Iranian political system, but on the level of the Iranian society, there is a huge interaction between religion and politics. Religion and politics are intertwined parts of the daily lives of the people because of Shiism, not because of Islam per se, but because of Shiism specifically and the principles of Shiism. So religion plays a very, very, very fundamental role in the life of the ordinary people. Add to this the political role played by al-wali al-faqih, and that was institutionalized in the regime ever since the success of, quote unquote, the Islamic Revolution in 1979. So it becomes cemented, the role religion plays. So it's not just corruption and bad economic conditions. It's also the very complicated and complex relationship between religion and politics.
Okay. So
this is why it makes things very harder.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, it's like cemented now into like the country and everything. Do you also think this is how people there think, or you think it's really just imposed by the state, all these rules? Like, if you want to describe the relationship between the state and the Iranian society right now, how would we do this? And is there
well, I think there is
society and how they think? Like,
I think the new generation, but not all the new generation, the educated, the urban new generations are thinking differently now, and maybe they're considering religion and politics and everything. But from what I see on the very few videos that are on the media right now, because as you already know and everybody else know, that we cannot really know what's happening in Iran because of the blackout, the media blackout. So we only have access to what's happening through people getting to send short videos on TikTok or Twitter or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I see very dangerous signs. I see people, ordinary people, not only the police or the regime forces are harassing women taking off their veils on the street. I see ordinary men and women harassing those brave young women who are daring to take off their veils. So this is very scary for me as a political scientist. This is very, very scary. So because you are not only fighting against the regime, but you are fighting against the people, people similar to you, fellow citizens. So this is why it's very scary, because this is very dangerous road, and I'm not sure if anyone is aware of this. And if the authority in Iran is aware of this and trying to control things so it doesn't blow in everybody's face. But this is really the scary part for me.
Yeah. And do you think...
To go back to your question, you're asking about the people, the state-society relationship in Iran. I think it's part of the...
Sorry, I can't hear you anymore. I don't know if it's me to...
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was saying that large part of the Iranian society are in a way dependent on the regime/religious institution, not only for spiritual matters, but also for economic matters. They get aid from the state and from the religious institution. The state is providing services, even with low quality, but it's the only service available. So people depend. And in this case, we might assume that their loyalty is towards the state and the religious institution, even if they're not that happy with the practices. But another segment of society, which I'm not sure about the size, I might assume it's not that small, but again, it's not that large, who were able to get education, have better exposure. They would have a different understanding about their relationship to the state, their relationship to religion, etc. And you cannot really rely on their loyalty towards the religious institution for receiving services and aid, because this is very questionable. So I think it's getting complicated, and it's getting, but I don't want to be too optimistic and think that those small segment of people who think differently and freely from the society will be able to make a huge impact because of the larger segment who depend on the state. And even if they have a problem with the performance of the administration or of the government, they really don't mind harassing a couple of women. And keep in mind also controlling women bodies is something that men universally would love to do. Forcing women to wear veil, or I would argue the other way around, forcing women to take off their veils is something men would love to do.
Yes.
So if they have the chance to do it, supported by the government, they would do it.
So it's more symbolic, this idea of forcing women to wear the veil.
Yes, because if you dare to say, this is my body, and this is my relationship to religion, and this is how I see, even if I'm veiled, okay, but it's my decision to wear it, okay, and if I decide to take it off, it will be my decision to take it off. This is for men, not every man, of course, but for men in the Middle East is a little bit significant because it would encourage you to think in more liberal terms about your body and what you want to do with it.
Okay. And you talked about the state institutions. What do you think the military institutions, what role do you think they play? And how is it evolving now?
It is, again, part of the complexity of the Iranian picture that they don't have a regular military institution as we know, because they have the regular army and the regular armed forces, and then the parallel military institutions that are working under the umbrella of the Murshid directly, the Passage, the revolution, excuse me, the Revolutionary Guard and the Passage, which is as powerful, if not more powerful, than the armed forces. So they take different jobs. Yani, while we know that the armed forces are responsible for the protection or the executing military operations on the borders or outside, this mission is competed by the Revolutionary Guard, who take the same mission as well. They are responsible for implementing and executing foreign policy missions for the Iranian government, as well as controlling the inside, the domestic front of Iran. So understanding the military institution in Iran, it cannot be done within the lines of understanding civil military relations anywhere, even in the Middle East, because again, it's not the simple form of military institution of armed forces. It's this in addition to a parallel armed forces that is part of the disciplining power of the state, domestically and internationally, and they work under the umbrella of the faqih, the murshid, the highest Khamenei, okay? And there is a lot of rivalry and competition between Revolutionary Guard and the armed forces. So, I don't know, but even if you cannot really rely on the military institution conducting a coup against the Murshid, they can't, because if they do it, the Murshid has the Revolutionary Guard who can definitely step in and defend him, and they have the equipment. I think you froze. I'm not sure.
Did I? You too for a bit.
So,
yeah. But I'm being able to follow you.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay. Cool. If you need to turn the video off at any point,
no, so far I'm fine.
Okay. Yes. Were you done? Did I interrupt you, or can we continue?
No. I was done. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I also wanted to ask you another question about like the veil as a dilemma, because women from one side are fighting to remove it in Iran and others are fighting to wear it in the West. So how do you think Muslims are being affected by this whole situation, especially when thinking about like Islamophobia in the West and radicalization in the Middle East on another side?
Yes. Well, veil is very problematic because it's very symbolic, and it's very evident. Yani, once a woman decides to wear a veil, even without saying it, she becomes a Muslim, a symbol of a Muslim identity, regardless how she herself believes about her Islam, what kind of Islam does she consider herself. Second, it gives the idea that there is only one interpretation of Islam. I would argue that even veiled women have different interpretations for their Islam, and the women who are not wearing veil but consider themselves practicing Muslim or believing Muslims. So we have multi versions of Islam, but veil would give the impression that there is only one way of being a Muslim woman, and expectations about this. Mm-hmm. So once you're veiled, comes a list of expectations about how you would think, what you would say, what would you eat, a preference about music, all the sexuality, everything. Okay, so I think it's very not it's important because of this, because the symbolic value it has. Okay, and because of the expectation it comes with. Okay, Iran again. I know I have said this many times, and probably I will keep on saying this. It's a very unique experience because before 1979, because of the Shah westernization and cultural orientation, women were banned from wearing veil, and ordinary women were starting to wear veil as a way of showing their.
Sorry, I'm interrupting, but it's
these decisions, and to the 80s, veil was imposed on them. And ever since veil was imposed after the success of the Islamic Revolution. I'm sorry?
Sorry, I'm interrupting, but it froze a lot after you were talking about how they couldn't wear the veil.
So let me turn off the camera.
Yes, I'm gonna try this too.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay, you can continue.
So I was saying that in Iran, Iranian women are dealing with their veils as a way of showing their opposition to the political system. So before the 1979, women would wear veil as a way of showing their protest and rejection of the Shah policies. And after 1979, women were starting to take off their veil or manipulate their veil in a way, not wearing it quote unquote properly according to the rules of the state, as a way of showing their rejection as well. On the other face of the coin, we are faced with women living in the West and facing discrimination because of their veil. Either they're banned from certain jobs, certain places, certain laws are restricting the right to wear veil. And again, I cannot see this without highlighting that it's a way of controlling women's bodies. And it really frustrates me because it seems that everywhere systems, regimes, institutions are very much preoccupied with controlling women's bodies, either to put a veil or to take it off. And the way I see it, it's if you believe it's my body, then it would be my right to decide how I want to cover it or uncover it. Just take it to the I'm not talking about a conspiracy, but telling a woman how she should look in public spaces, how she should dress in public spaces, it's the way of controlling her body. Even if you are you claim that you are protecting her against oppression and being forced into wearing veil, but on the other hand, you are also not respecting her choice to put a scarf on her head or to wear modest dresses or to do whatever. There is definitely, again, but coming back to the idea I was talking about earlier, that veil is very symbolic. I can understand this. I'm not justifying it, but I can understand it within the Islamophobia in the West. Fear of Islam and fear of the connection that is being made between Islam and terrorism, that whatever is Islamic is by definition a terrorist to be. Or I can see this, but I think the way to fight this is to insist on women bodies are their bodies and they have the right to cover it or to uncover it.
You were talking about like this Islamophobia, and you were saying earlier that now it's more educated women and like new generations who are more pro-revolution and think more about differentiating the state and religion. Do you think this might be a sort of risk for some people to interpret it in an Islamophobic way, that like by educating yourself or by getting more like westernized, you get further from religion, for example, and we come back to this conflict that is very present in Iran of westernization versus traditionalism?
But this is the point. I think we need to deconstruct the relationship between education and westernization. The assumption that the more I get educated, the more westernized I will be, the more anti-religion I would be. I think this is a combination that we need to rethink and reconsider. Okay, because I would argue that within Islamic tradition, quote unquote Islamic tradition, there are new interpretation of religion, of even veil. What does veil mean? Okay, and I would argue that there are new generation of young women and men who are educated and they are exposed to different cultures. But in the meantime, they don't have a problem with religion. They have a problem with the practices of the religious institution. Okay, they have a problem with the interpretation of the religion, and they would use their knowledge, their education, technology to reach out for the Quran and Sunnah, okay, and come up with interpretations that are more, I don't want to call it liberal, but that are more or less conflictual with universal ideas. Okay, I would argue that my understanding of veil, I've been veiled for more than 25 years. Okay, and it was my decision to do this. Okay, but I would argue that the reason I decided to wear veil 25 years ago is completely different from the reason I'm still wearing my veil now. Okay. My understanding of my body, of the Quran and Sunnah, and the wisdom and the philosophy of veil developed throughout the years, throughout the experience I'm gaining, throughout the exposure, throughout rethinking about my femininity and religion. So, assuming that education would definitely lead people to practices that are not religious, I think this is the argument used by authorities and by religious institutions to scare people from education.
Okay.
So if you get education, you will be less religious, so you will burn in hell. Better live in total ignorance and enjoy heaven, rather than educating yourself, which is something I think is not true.
I think this is the message they're trying to
yes, definitely. And this is the I can see it in the eyes of the people who are harassing women on the street in Iran, men and women. They're not doing it because they're bad people. They're fed with the idea that they are protecting religion, and they are protecting those poor kids who are manipulated by Western ideas. And I saw a video that was extremely beautiful about young Iranian women on the metro, and they were addressing other females on the metro as well, telling them that we are not the enemy and we should not fight against each other. You should, as much as we respect your choice to wear chador, you should be able to understand our choices and respect our choices, not to be forced into veil.
Yes. Wow. I didn't see this video actually. Is it new?
It's a beautiful one. I see random videos on TikTok mainly.
Oh, yes. TikTok has so many of these. They're very beautiful. And so would you say that, like, in a way, because you work on non-conventional forms of resistance, like, how would you define this? Would you say that wearing or not wearing a veil is a form of non-conventional resistance? And if we look at what happened last week with Mahsa Amini and the resulting manifestations, is it considered an example of it?
Yes, definitely it is. But my understanding of non-conventional forms of resistance is less obvious. I'm talking about the daily practices of ordinary people, men and women, by which they implicitly resist, and they change very gradually and very slowly the power dynamics in the society.
Okay.
What's happening now is more obvious, and it's more of a social non-movements, which is great, which is definitely great. Unfortunately, I don't think anything concrete will come out of it. But even this is telling that the society is changing, and that are increasing number, and it's amazing to see young men joining women in this. So it's not only women fighting for their veil. So you cannot really frame it as those are immoral women wants to be walking on the street naked. It's really it's telling that it's a demand of the young generation that they want to take control of their lives. They want to take control of their bodies to start with, and then they will take it a next step, and they want to control their lives and their future. Definitely it is. Even throughout the years, women deciding to wear veil in a different way that is imposed on them. There are criteria for wearing a proper veil in Iran. And in certain times, the authorities would harass women on the street for not wearing it properly. But if you have been to Iran, I've been to Iran many times from 2001 till 2007. And throughout the years I went there, I could see women, increasing number of women are not wearing hijab as they are expected to.
Oh.
And for me, it is a form of resistance. Daily, tiny actions of resistance.
Okay. So we are
even
change.
Yes. Even people would make a joke about Iranian being fascinated with doing no one's job. Iranian women being fascinated of doing no one's job. And I remember this joke that on the streets of Iran you would see many women walking on the street, young women and even middle age, with a plastic bandage on their nose, meaning that they had a nose job either in Iran or a neighboring country. I think even this is an act of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Even it's some would argue that this is very westernized, this is very capitalized idea about beauty and the standards of beauty, but also you cannot deny it reflects an ability of a woman to control the way she looks, the way she meets the outside world.
Yeah, it's just that having more freedom with your own body.
Yes, I'm gonna change my nose.
Mm-hmm.
And so those tiny actions are there. It's just that the way we are trained as political scientists, we are not used to see it.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the big events, we look at the demonstrations, we look at the strikes.
Yeah, this only after or before, like.
Yeah, but the tiny actions are really happening on daily basis.
So, like, what do you think of the big events? Do you think they really make any change, or you think they express change that's already happening?
They do both. They express the change, okay, and they might result in big changes. But even if they don't result in big changes, they at least highlight the challenges, and they force people to stop and think. Even if we don't seem that we really are thinking, but we do. You have to stop and think. Especially with the social media and the footage, you cannot, there is a huge impact of social media, not only on transferring of information, but also on forcing people to think about the little actions. Just before we had our conversation, I saw a very, very sad video about the father who was dancing in the funeral of his daughter. And the caption says that the father promised his daughter to dance in her wedding. Now she's dead, he's dancing in her funeral.
Wow.
It's a very sad footage.
Yeah.
But people watching this, they have to stop and think. Even if they don't realize it, but they will carry it in the back of their minds and it will make them think.
It touches you because also you realize it's real people. It's not just laws and
events. And it's not about big politicians competing over votes. It's not about big laws that this man does not really even if the law changes, but at the end of the day, he is a father who lost a daughter. Okay, so it's very relevant to the daily lives, to the realities of the people.
It's very interesting, honestly, to see these events make a change, and we should pay more attention to the small things.
Yes, definitely. And this is one of the things that when you were reading the areas of interest of my work, I'm trained as a traditional political scientist, but I have always had a problem with traditional political science that it didn't help me to answer the questions. Even when I was doing my PhD, my focus was on institutions and policies, but I felt that there is something missing. It doesn't tell me everything.
Okay. Did you add it to your work in a way or another, like your own touch and what you thought was missing?
Yes, and to see what is politics is how it relates to people in their daily life and how they understand it and how they resist it and how they cope with it.
Okay. I think that's it for me. But thank you so much. It was a very, very interesting conversation, and also a very different way of seeing politics, because I think a big issue is that a lot of people tell me they don't like politics because it's always just about big politicians and fake speeches. So looking at the other side, which is actually what matters, like the consequences, the people, I think
Yes.
it's motivating.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I really enjoyed it.
Me too. I really enjoyed it too and learned even more about Iran. Thank you so much for taking some of your time for this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. And I wish you all the luck.
Thank you. Thank you to you too. I will send you the link when it's posted on YouTube.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Have a good evening, I guess, in Egypt.
Yeah, have a good day in Turkey.
Thank you.
Is it that cold in Canada yet?
Not yet, not yet. It's okay. I mean, compared to the Middle East, yes. It's like 18 degrees, 15 degrees now.
Oh, wow.
We're far from the minus 30.
Oh, okay. It's still summer here.
It's still summer. Yeah, I miss it so much.
I hope to see you. I hope to see you in Cairo, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye. You too.
Bye. Bye.